Welcome to the Parenting Then and Now podcast, the show that remembers the good and sometimes the not so good old days of parenting past. I'm your host, Samantha Kemp-Jackson from the Multiple Mayhem Mama blog, and every week we'll be talking about how things were then and how they are now, parenting through the lens of the ages, if you will. Now, whether you're a parent, a kid, or someone who used to be a kid, you'll want to stay tuned as we reminisce about the past, embrace the future, and marvel in the present how things have changed. If you're ready to glance back in time at kids, parenting, and the good old days, you're in the right place. So sit back, relax, and let's take a trip down parenting's memory lane. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The world is your oyster. That's what many of us tell our kids, but how many of us parents really mean it? Sure, we say that when our children grow up, they can do anything or go anywhere they want, but while they're in the throes of childhood, no way. They're staying put. End of story. Why? Well, perhaps it's the stress of even thinking about traveling with kids. Any of us who have dealt with a toddler meltdown in the supermarket or a baby screaming their most colic-intensive scream for hours on end would shy away from the prospect of a meltdown at 30,000 feet. Travel? Me? With the baby? No way, you may say. Yet, it can be done, and it's done regularly. Enter my guest on the PTAN podcast today. She is indeed someone who's done it. Natalie Preddie-Zamojc is a travel writer, blogger, media personality, and much more. Perhaps most importantly of all, she's a mom, and a mom who has not let the magnitude of motherhood stop her. A lifelong traveler, she can thank her parents for imbuing in her a love of the unknown, an appreciation for other cultures, and a fearlessness that comes with traveling to unexplored terrains, regardless of age. On this episode of the Parenting Then and Now podcast, I sit down with a world traveler who came to her love of adventure through a childhood that allowed her to experience the unexpected, to venture into parts unknown, and to boldly go where many travelers had indeed gone before, though perhaps not those who were still in their parents' care. Here's our interview. So welcome to the Parenting Then and Now podcast, Natalie. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It is so great to have you here. I'm sitting with Natalie Preddie-Zamojc, and she is a travel writer and parenting writer that focuses on travel. And I thought it would be really interesting to have a conversation with you because you have experienced a lot of parenting moments with your children overseas and in different locations. And I know that that's different from how you were raised and how you were brought up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got to where you are today?
Well, my family are big travelers, always have been. Both my parents are immigrants. My mom's from England and my dad's from Jamaica. And my mom has always been a big traveler. So, she lived on a kibbutz in Israel for a bit. She spent some time in Mexico. She spent time in Greece. And for her, coming to Canada was a big adventure. So she was always big on adventures for us. So, we'd go to Europe or mostly Europe within our summers and when we could as well. And she was just a big advocate of that and of exploring and learning. And of course, with two different cultures in my life, we had a very, very English upbringing, but we also had the Jamaican side as well.
All right.
Yes, absolutely. So it was great to have this clash of cultures, and it made me realize that there was a lot more out there than just, my little home in Cambridge, Ontario.
So when were you a child? Was it like the 80s, 90s?
80s and 90s, mm-hmm. Yeah. Where I guess Cambridge at that time, as far as I knew, was very white middle class. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like going into even my Jamaican side of the family was a bit of a different cultural experience than I was going to have Monday to Friday at school. So even that little bit of that little bit of
interest,
or
curiosity.
Yeah, eye-opening experience. I can't think of words. Baby brain. That experience with my Jamaican side of the family was so different from my experiences with my English side of the family that it really highlighted that there were these huge differences throughout our world and even within our country, and that really founded a lot of curiosity in me, and traveling around the world just seemed like the obvious thing to do.
Of course, as one does, right?
Yes, absolutely. And, I have a question, and my parents were very, very excited about exploring and learning more. And, my parents always encouraged us to ask questions and to really dig for the answer, and to realize that we were global citizens and embrace that. And regardless of the color of our skin or how curly our hair was or anything like that, that we were part of a bigger picture, and we were beautiful and full of love, and that's what the whole world is or should be. So I think that really fueled it gave me lots of inspiration to travel and to learn more about other parts of the world and other cultures, other people. It was definitely fueled by them.
They sound like fantastic people, that they gave you that love of travel and love of other cultures and, places around the world. So you were fortunate in the fact that you were able to travel as a child. That was atypical, I think, especially when we go back, maybe 20 or 30 years. We didn't have that much of a global world because we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have that information that was out there that would facilitate our wanting to travel. So can you tell us a little bit about when you started traveling with your family, how old you were, and whether or not that was the experience of your peer group and your friends? Did it look like it was strange to other people?
That's a good question. I was flying from the time I was born. My aunt was a flight attendant on British Airways, so that helped. And we flew back and forth from England a lot. Right from when I was a baby. And, we had issues then. It was definitely strange. My father was often stopped at security for traveling with a baby that didn't look like him, that wasn't black. So we really dealt with those sort of things early on in my life. I think it was odd for my friends, yes, that, they went down to Myrtle Beach maybe, or if they went anywhere at all, or somewhere across Canada, that, we would get up and leave for weeks at a time and go to England or go to France. So I was traveling right from when I was a little kid and with my family, but also just with my mom. So, there were times when my mom was taking 3 kids from the age of 0 up to the age of 8 by herself as well. So travel was never really something I thought about as being odd, but looking back now, yes, we were really the only family that I know that did that in my area as well.
I know that when I was growing up, and I'm just a little tiny bit older than you. I was just a tad. When I was growing up, it was atypical. So you wouldn't have a lot of families who would travel, all 5 of them, on a plane to somewhere, far flung. If anything, there were a lot of road trips in the 1970s and 80s, but not so much of the family travel. Now, fast forward to today, where you are now the family travel person here, and you travel a lot with your husband and with your son and your child-to-be. And so first of all, how did you convince your husband? Because did he have the same kind of travel background? And second of all, what do you see are the challenges and the things that have gotten easier in terms of traveling with children now than when you were a child?
So I, like I said, have always been a traveler. And I just want to point out that it's not necessarily a money thing. It's not like you have loads of cash that you're able to do this. My parents were not
Well, that's a question that people are going to ask, though, right? Because if you're saying, travel with your family, people are going to say, but how? It's so expensive.
Yeah, and you know what? They didn't have a lot of money, but it was their priority. So other things we went without, because that's where the money went, into the plane tickets, into the house to rent, into those sort of things. That was where their money went, and it just didn't go elsewhere. So I think that's something very, very important to highlight.
So it's prioritizing.
So it's prioritizing it, and with myself as well, and my husband. It's not. We are definitely not in a place where we can splurge on plane tickets. But again, it's something that we have made a priority, and I have made a priority with my husband. So I left home when I was 19, moved to England, and then a few years later went backpacking around Southeast Asia. Much to my father's dismay, and went by myself. Did a year around there, spent some time filming with a film company in Nigeria, just, really explored the world as much as I could from my backpack, picked up a few jobs here and there, and I felt like this was something that I needed to continue, exploring, right back from my childhood, exploring, discovering. Then I met my husband, and I was still living in England at the time, and he was here in Canada. So we spent some time, doing long distance. He would come over, we would travel. We had come back and travel here. I had never been to an all-inclusive before, which was a completely different experience for me. But, that sense of wonder and curiosity and not being able to sit still was something that always bugged me. And, I said to my husband right from when we were dating, I don't know how long I can stay here in Toronto. I'm itching to go. Yeah, I'm itching to go visit somewhere newer, and I want to discover something else. And it was difficult for me at first to come here and not have the freedom. I don't want to say freedom because that makes it sound like my husband forced me to stay here, which is not the case. But not, being in England and traveling, it's so close to go everywhere.
That's true.
You can hop on a flight for £50 and you're in Croatia. Or, Friday night you say, you know what, we should go to Spain for the weekend. And you hop on a plane and, you're there instantly. And you just don't have that flexibility here in Canada with not only the price of a ticket, but also proximity as well, right? So we're really focused on restricted, it feels like, to the States a lot. And this was completely different for me and how I traveled. So, I said to my husband, this is a big part of my life, and this is something that I want to pass on to my kids, that sense of wonder and wanderlust and never taking the answer in front of you and going to discover what happens next.
And was he a traveler before he met you? Was he somebody who had that same kind of desire to want to expand into the world, or maybe not as much as you?
He definitely likes to explore. So he played minor league baseball for many years. So he traveled within the States and then was up in Alaska. And then after he graduated university, he also did one of those Kentucky tours and went across Europe as well. So he wanted to know, and he likes to explore as well. And he is very much someone who will not settle for the answer you've given him.
Okay, so the travel works well then.
So the travel does work well. He's also very practical. So, something like money and time and restrictions like that are very real to him. And whereas I tend to say, let's go, let's go and we'll figure it out. He's a bit more, okay, well, let's look at what we've got lined up in our future and how we make that work.
Well, that sounds like a really good segue into how you got into your profession or your career right now, which is really focusing on writing about travel and family travel, and you have those kind of firsthand experiences when you do go places. I'm just going to stop there, and we'll just take a little bit of a break to hear some words from our sponsor, and then we're going to return with Natalie and her traveling tips. So we're back with Natalie. Natalie, before the break, we were talking about traveling with kids. How did you get into the whole, because, considering what you said about your husband being frugal, about living in Canada and having to contend with A, the landmass that you have to fly over, and B, the cost and the pricing. I see you traveling all over the place, Natalie, on social media. So how did you get there?
Well, it was, as with everything, it's one of those things you just happen to fall into. I knew I was here working in PR, and I knew that I wanted something a little bit different. So my first story, just through some connections and talking, was going to Kenya for the Toronto Star.
Your first story was going to Kenya. How do you go back from that?
Exactly.
The bar is so high.
The bar is so high.
Did you pitch them? How did you do that?
No. So my friend was publishing a magazine and wanted a really cool travel story. Another friend had been offered the trip, but she didn't have the publication to publish the story. And so my name came up, and I asked the publisher. She said, absolutely. And I ended up going on this trip. And while I was on the trip, the magazine folded. And I thought, oh no, what am I going to do?
Did they pay for the trip up front?
So Magical Kenya, which is the tourism board, yes, paid for everything. So I'm desperately going, oh my goodness, I've had this amazing trip and the most phenomenal experience of my life. And I mean, this trip really, really changed this is the ultimate pivot in my life. I feel like just the magic of being on the Mara itself and seeing these animals up close as you and I. There's a lion right there with her 14 cubs. Phenomenal. Anyway, I pitched the Toronto Star, just thought, let's see what happens. And the editor at the time loved it and sent in the story, sent in my photos, and within a few weeks, I saw my face on the front page of the Toronto Star travel section.
Wow.
And it just blew my mind, and I thought, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to tell these stories. And it was a story about how Kenya is really using conservation to help tourism and also to help their endangered species as well. So it was such a fantastic experience, and I was so happy that I was able to share this story with everyone here in Canada, and I knew this is what I had to do. So the next story I got assigned by the Toronto Star was in Belize, and looking at...
well, that's pretty shoddy too.
I know. See, the bar is so high. And I ended up doing a paddling holiday, which I had never done before, and looking at conservation in Belize. They've got the second largest coral reef in the world there, and it's really a unique destination. So I was, again, front page of the Toronto Star travel section, blew my mind, and I was just so excited to continue to tell these stories.
And I hear the passion in your voice because, when you started talking about your trip to Kenya and the animals and now Belize, all of a sudden your voice got a lot more animated, and I'm sitting across from you and you look like you're just so excited. So there is something to be said about having that passion in what you're doing for a living, and I guess the opportunities come your way that way.
Absolutely. And just saying yes and being open to the adventure, which, going back to my parents and from traveling as a kid, it's just always saying yes and exploring and continue to explore. And then when I was having kids, I found out I was pregnant, I thought, I don't want this to end. And I don't think it has to. And a lot of people I found thought, well, you're pregnant, you're having a kid, that's it. It's over. You're not going to be able to travel for 5 to 10 years. And I even remember someone saying, about a press trip. Oh, well, Natalie, you're pregnant. I didn't think you wanted to go. And I said, I'm pregnant, not dead. Come on. Like, let's go.
Says someone who's been pregnant a few times.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
Exactly. So, I really wanted to show people that traveling with your kids is still an option. And there are just loads of different ways to do it. You may have to adjust things. Your backpacking days and living in hostels may be gone or on hold for a bit. But there are ways to travel with your children and to incite that same excitement and passion about these new destinations that we as travelers have.
So, Natalie, I think a lot of parents like the idea in theory about traveling with kids, but they're daunted by it. And they think that they can't do it, A, because of the cost, B, because of the expanse of the land that they're living, like living in Canada, which is a big place. And also the fact they think that it's just not, there are no places out there that they can travel to that are amenable to having families and kids. Because, I know that when I've traveled, there's that single supplement and all of this kind of stuff. So what practical advice can you give us people who really want to travel and we have kids and we don't have money? Help.
Oh my goodness. You can do it. It is possible. Research. Put a list together of places that you'd like to go and call ahead. Find out what the accommodation options are, what type of rental gear they have. Because, I always say travel light. You don't want to, walk through the airport with 5 gazillion bags and a stroller and a car seat. So you can rent a lot of baby gear when you get to a place.
That's a really good idea. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. I never thought about that, but that makes so much sense. Instead of having to travel with a stroller,
yes,
like the car seat I get, because you want to make sure that if you've got a little baby, once you get there, you want to be able to put the baby in the car seat in the car. But a stroller is so cumbersome.
Yeah.
Well,
there are a lot of great travel strollers out there. I will say that now. But in terms of the car seat, the crib, the pack and play, if you are renting a house somewhere, you can get a lot of that stuff delivered straight to the house. High chairs, bottles, everything.
Really?
Oh,
bottles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you are going on a cruise, for instance, you decide you want to do that, they will provide diapers and wipes for you, so you don't have to bring anything on the actual boat.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
And they don't. And so, that's why I say before you go somewhere, research. Call ahead. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and do an old-fashioned call. Real phone call and say, listen, here's what I'm coming in with. What are my options? Make sure you have meals. You know what meals are available, what meal times are if you're going to a resort or something like that. And when it comes to single supplements, things like additional costs, a lot of different holiday package makers are deleting those costs or have specific sales. Again, pick up the phone and call and say, listen, I'm going on holiday and this is how many people I'm bringing, or I'm coming by myself. How can you help me? Because, they want...
They have a vested interest in making you comfortable and happy so that you'll come back and tell all your friends.
Exactly. So don't underestimate how much these companies actually do want to help you. And of course, start small. If you're scared, if you're nervous, maybe you start by going to a resort, or you start by renting an Airbnb up in Muskoka or something like that. Again, research. You also want to know in terms of medical care. If you have a really young baby, find out what medical care is available in the area. Find out what travel options are there as well. So in terms of transport to and from the airport, things like that. Just try, and this is so hard, but try to be flexible when you're trying to go away. So, if your child misses a nap time, if your child sleeps at the wrong time or is a bit screwed up by time change, that's okay. Babies are resilient, right? And while it's not ideal to completely throw off a schedule, it's not great for all of us with time change either, and we all get grumpy, and we can all have our days and nights thrown off, and babies do too. So when you're traveling with a child or a baby specifically, I think my key message is to just be flexible. Just understand that the baby will cry and you will cry. and it doesn't have to be a stressful situation. Just be open to seeing where it takes you. You could discover something new about yourself, about your child. And
that you didn't know.
Exactly.
I really like that particular piece of advice, because I think that people who have young children, specifically babies or toddlers, who really, for practical reasons need to be on a schedule, I think parents of children of those ages often feel that, how could I go to another time zone because little Johnny's nap will be off by 5 hours? Or how could I go on this hiking trip because when does he get his nap? Or, whereas I think what you're saying, Natalie, is, just let things be, and the kids will recover and be resilient. And I agree with that, because I have 4 children and I've had babies and toddlers, and I've maybe not traveled as much as you have, but I can say that when a kid doesn't have their nap, they might be crabby or they might not be crabby. You know what? It depends on the day, the time. There are a lot of other factors that go into how they behave, whether or not they're going to have a tantrum or not. So I like how you're saying about being open, being flexible, and doing research. What else can parents do?
Also look at multi-generational travel as well.
Oh, what's that?
So that's when I decide to travel and my mother comes too.
So basically bring a babysitter with you.
Bring a babysitter with you, or just bring backup. I like to travel with my family. So my sister, her kids, my brother comes along, my parents, our partners. And it makes for an experience that all of us can enjoy, but also, it takes some of the pressure off, maybe gives you an opportunity to have a night out, or while your parents are home with the baby, things like that. That's one good option. So, that kind of relieves some pressure of being the sole carer for the baby. But also, if you're looking at a resort, look for places that have childcare. But, you want to be very careful. You want certified nannies or caretakers. You want to know that, again, medical care is close by should you need it. And you want somewhere that's really attentive to the fact that you are a family and a young family, and how they can help you. There's one resort that I absolutely love, and they very much cater to the family and the parents, and how the parents can relax, but also how the kids can relax, programming for children and adults. And I think that's what really makes a destination stand out, is how they cater to families. And a lot more destinations are catering to families. Again, we go back to the research and finding out what destinations will help you with your baby and with your toddler. What are ideal activities for them to do that will be available. So also make smart decisions about where you decide to go. I know that I won't be taking my son and my unborn son to Kenya on safari yet. I just know that they are not going to get
too much,
a lot out of it. Yeah. I think you have to make age appropriate decisions as well. I just don't think he's going to really understand that lion over there,
the magnitude of what they're seeing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think you need to make those decisions when planning how you're going to travel. That being said, when a baby is young, is within that first year, before they get to a year, is a fantastic time to travel, because they're fairly easy. You can pop your baby in a carrier and walk if you're comfortable with that. The baby usually doesn't need that much gear at that point. You can get lots of travel gear. You can get a little portable high chair that's like a little pouch you can put your baby in on a normal chair. You've got travel bottles. You've got travel bottle warmers if you want to. But again, because you've done your research, you know that one of the places you're staying is going to have a stove where you can heat up baby's milk if you need to. But they're also very easygoing at that age. You can still take them for free on a plane. And they're less fussy once you get to 1 and 2, where my son is. He gets on a 6-hour flight and there is no shot that he is going to sit still for that.
So you have to be prepared to have the tools and the things that are going to keep your kid more or less entertained during those flights, especially if they're long, right?
Exactly. And, in terms of practical tips for getting on that plane, like I said, you will have researched ahead of time, so you'll know you won't have to bring loads and loads of gear with you. So you'll have your travel stroller, which you can gate check, so you can roll right up to the gate. They'll take that and it'll be right in the same spot when you get to the other side. And you can bring bottles through full of milk through security. You can bring pouches and you can bring snacks.
And they don't check the milk?
They have they do check it, but it's for the baby, right? And they're fantastic about knowing that. They'll take one of those little magic wands and wave it over to make sure that it is what you have said it is, and then you can keep going. What I do is I put bottles full of water and then formula in little side pouches or a formula travel container, and then mix them on the plane.
Okay.
So you can do that. Always bring new snacks, a comfort toy that your child has and likes, and something new that they've never seen before. So pop down to the dollar store and grab a dump truck. My son has this dump truck that I bought for a plane ride from the dollar store, and he still plays with it. He loves it.
It's that element of surprise.
It's the element of surprise, and they're just so excited by that new toy that will captivate their attention as well. And do not underestimate the power of an iPad as well, or some sort of tablet.
So use technology.
Yeah,
I'm all about the tech too.
The tools are there, and my mom always says, well, I didn't have that when you were a kid. No, but I do now.
And what's your point, Mom?
Exactly. So, you can download it ahead of time so you don't have to deal with Wi-Fi on the planes. And, your kid will sit there and watch that, different games. Just something new and exciting for them. But know that you can bring those special creature comforts from home, the bottles, the snacks. Know that you can bring those with you on the plane, and you do not have to worry about that.
So it is doable, because I think a lot of people feel that it's not doable traveling with kids, right? So just basically do your research, make sure that you're flexible, bring all of the gear that you need.
Yeah.
Phone ahead if you have to.
Yep.
One thing I want to know is, what about your accommodations? So have you done, like the Airbnb type of stuff? And how does that work with kids? Because that's a new thing. We didn't have Airbnb back in the day.
So that's a fantastic question. The Airbnb is a great way to travel. If you can get your child their own room with the Airbnb, then that is a bonus, because, to have your child sleep soundly by themselves in their own room like they do at home, that's perfect. Also, with the Airbnb, you can have you have access to a kitchen should you need it. And like I said, you can rent the baby gear ahead of time and have it delivered to the Airbnb, which is perfect.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it's just fantastic. So we stayed at an Airbnb with my son when he was 8 months. And my family was there as well. My mother and father and sister and brother, and it was great just because he had his own room. We had that space, and we were really because it was like home. It made everyone feel calmer as well. We were on our own schedule, and the first thing we did when we got there is set up his sleep space, his feeding space, and his changing space and his playing space. And you can do that anywhere. So whether you're in a hotel room or you're at a resort, whether you're at an Airbnb, it's really comforting for yourself and also the child if you set up those spaces right away. So you know exactly where you're going to go to sleep, and then, oh, it's playtime, let's move over here. And that kind of helps the child feel like they're in that routine that they crave right away, as are you. So it kind of makes things a little bit easier. Pardon me?
More homey.
More homey. Yeah. It's again, it's that comfort that you can provide on the road.
Those are all really great tips, Natalie, and you obviously know what you're talking about, unlike myself. I'm actually heartened to see that your parents' experience of wanting to expose you and your siblings to travel as a young child has informed what you're doing today as an adult. And I would recommend everybody who is listening to this podcast to check you out online, on your website, on your social media channels. You share a lot of great tips and advice. And I know that you've got a regular segment on television. You share those segments on your social media channels as well. So can you tell us where we can find you online and on TV? And I will make sure that I share that on the website on our show notes as well.
Absolutely. So my website is Natty P online, NATTY online.com and _ Natty P, and that is on Instagram and Twitter, Adventures of Natty P on Facebook. And yeah, you can find me on CHCH and on CTV, sharing tips about family travel, how to ease stress, family travel, and of course some fabulous ideas for vacations and for travel destinations, that sort of thing.
That's fantastic. I will share all of your handles on the website, and I want to thank you very much for being on the Parenting Then and Now podcast today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
You can be anything you want to be, do anything you want to do, go anywhere you want to go. That's what we tell our kids, but how many of us really live the life that we want our children to experience? How many of us are fearful of the unknown, making us comfortable close to home, but perhaps longing for adventures further afield? Natalie Preddie-Zamojc's parents showed her the way by living the lives that they wanted to live, whether it was in their home base of London or in destinations that were way ahead of Greenwich Mean Time. We're talking another hemisphere, folks. My discussion with Natalie showed me, and I hope you, that instilling a love of travel within your children is one of the best things that you can do as a parent. Why? Because the fearlessness that comes after they've experienced another country, lifestyle, or culture can only help them in their lives as adults and as global citizens of the world. Thank you, Natalie, for showing us the way and for inspiring us to live, embrace, and love the wanderlust that lives inside each and every one of us every day. Hey PTANers, if you like this episode or other episodes, please visit my Patreon page and become a patron of the podcast. Becoming a member will help grow the show and provide much more groovy stuff related to parenting, being a kid, growing up, then and now, and so much more. Natalie provides some excellent advice and tips for parents who want to travel with kids only for my Patreon followers. So check it out. You can go to the URL at patreon.com/PTAN podcast. Stay groovy.